ultimately you're part of the team, and you are both, you both want what's best for the kids that you're either coaching or your own kids, right? So my experience is I am an athlete myself. I do have a PhD in psychology. I did my work in performance psychology specifically. I'm a two-time Olympian. I competed in the 1988 and 1992 Olympic Games. I was a high jumper. After that, I went on to get my master's and PhD, and my PhD I got in Spain, and I was working with, my thesis advisor was the sports psychologist of Real Madrid. So I got to do some work with the Real Madrid Academy. So when I got back, I'm originally from Mexico. When I got back to Mexico, I worked with Chivas and Pumas, and then in 2009 I moved here and started working in 2010 with YSC, then with the Philadelphia Union, and then with some of all of these other clubs, and now with the YSC Academy as well. So it's performance psychology, because when they're at school, it's also about how you perform better in school. Aside from the fact that I'm an athlete and that I was an athlete and have that experience, I also have experience as a parent, because I am the mom of a goalie. So, goalie parents, I feel your pain. So I'm the mom of a goalie. My son, since started walking, started saying, his first word was mom, second word was ball. And he has been in love with the ball and soccer ever since he could walk. He's now playing at the Real Sociedad second division team. So he already has a contract with the first team and plays for the second team now. So he's kind of like third in line. He's 21 years old. So and I'm not claiming like, do what I did. It's more like, do what he did, right? Because it really is about him. So I do have experience as a parent, and I was able to help in some of the transition. And I've actually asked him permission to tell part of his story, because I think that parents can connect to that really well. When we moved from Mexico to the US, he was already playing with the Chivas Academy and was really happy with that. When we moved here, there wasn't any union, or they had FC Delco, and he started playing with that, but it was very, very different from what he was used to in Mexico. In Mexico it was a little bit of a more formal academy where they have a training site, and they have kind of like what we have now with both Continental and with a union. When we got here, we didn't have that. It was like, okay, sometimes you train here, sometimes you train there. It was like different places, and finding out where to train, and training got canceled. Got very frustrated, and at one point said to me, I'm not gonna make it, and it's your fault because you brought me here, right? And I just looked at him and I said, well, you know what, if you don't make it, you don't want it bad enough. Because if you actually want to make it, you'll figure it out. Yes, it might be a little bit more difficult than if you were, but if you really want it, you'll figure out how to get there. So, worked through some things and figured it out, right? And I'm not saying he's made it, because he still has a lot of work, but he's in the right path, and he's doing what he wants to do. So I think that's what we all want. We want our kids to find their way. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about, giving you some examples. So I want to talk to you about a survey that I conducted with UNED, the university that I went to in Spain. A couple of years ago, some of you might have even answered, because I sent this survey out, and if you've ever been to YSC, you're probably part of our mailing list, so you probably got this survey. So the survey asked, it was a survey of parents in youth sports. Oh my goodness. I don't know why it got all moved. So the idea is parents in youth sports, so we wanted to get the parents' point of view, the coach's point of view, and then sports psychologist's points of view. It was 22 countries. Spain, the US had the most participants, Mexico, Portugal, the rest of Europe, you know, just to give you an idea with numbers. Okay, this one's better. Okay, so this is the distribution of number of people that, you know, what the numbers were, and others means physios and doctors and stuff like that also answered the survey, right? So this survey had 31 different items ranging from parental support, information and expectations of parents, the communication between parents and coaches, the parents' emotional control, parental pressures, and because we had a pretty good sample, we were able to do some comparisons between countries. So I think you'll find that a little bit interesting. This is what the survey looked like. This is the Spanish version, and we had an English version as well. So the findings, just getting to the findings. Communication, 86% of parents said that the coaches need more time to communicate, right? So, and this was across the board. I mean, so this is all parents from all of the different countries, right? 84% said that it's better if parents respect boundaries, and this was of all participants, so counting coaches and parents, you know, parents saying that it's better when they respect boundaries. 80% say that it's better when administrators deal with parents. And again, this is everybody talking, right? So it's like 62% of parents think that the communication is deficient between coaches and parents. 47% of coaches and 55% of the parents thought that the coach didn't have the necessary skills to communicate. And this is counting everybody, right? So at least half, I mean, even the coaches feel like I don't have all the necessary skills. So if I don't have all the necessary skills, how do I communicate better, right? So that's part of the reason for doing the survey is to get a little bit more information and actually be able to provide information to coaches and parents. 98% of parents said that they need to learn how to control their emotions. 98%, that's pretty big, you know? So there's 2% of parents who think they've got it. I'd love to meet them. Right? 84 say that they transmit their own anxiety to their children. You know, so if, I mean, and this could actually be, I mean, depending on how you look at it, I think that this is a good thing because if you're actually aware of that, then you can do something about it. If you're not aware of it, if you're like, no, my kids, you know, they don't get it at all. I mean, like I get stressed, but they don't get it. You know, then we have, I think, a little bit more of a problem. So I think that this is actually a good thing. 70% of parents say they deal with emotions by yelling at the ref. So I'm sure that, so what happens in this type of talk is that usually the parents who are actually, this is like when you do a talk about how much TV time your kids should get, you know, and the parents who come are the kids who only watch an hour of TV a day. You know, I'm sure that here I have the parents that actually are really supportive and good. And you're thinking of a couple parents that should be here that are not, right? So we're going to go through all of this. So 86% of those parent surveys say that they collaborate actively in getting their kids to participate in sport, you know, taking them to and from. They say that they change their schedule and accommodate too. So here's some of, you know, result-oriented. 62% say that they continue to support children no matter the outcome. What's striking to me about this one is that a third of parents say that they don't, depending on the outcome. So if you're not doing that well, it's not as great. 66 say that the results affect their emotions. And again, you know, parents and coaches agree that parents overstep with technical opinions. Right? You need to take into consideration that this survey was also done in Europe, and the results are mixed, right? So parents pressure their kids for results. What's the biggest number that you see there is in the US, 91% of parents agree. That was where we separated them. And so, you know, if you see Spain, which is a pretty good soccer country, right, you would say, when you're talking about kids, they don't pressure as much for results. And this obviously is going to depend on where you are, right? In what age group you're in. Why bring all of this up? Well, because we all know that there's benefits that we get through with sports, for kids. So, but I wanted to give you a little bit of information of what are some of the results saying, of people in, this was done 2 years ago. So this is parents in the U.S. The parents from the U.S. are actually all soccer parents from our region. So this isn't like a parent in Florida or in California. This is all from the YSC listserv, so some of you might have answered this. The benefit of sports, we all know the benefits of sports, physical development, healthy habits, nutrition and health in general, right? I mean, you get to have fun, build relationships, all of this type of thing. For mental strength, the psychological aspects, self-esteem, self-image, self-confidence, self-control, concentration. I don't know if you guys recognize that's the head coach of the Philadelphia Union now. He used to be a coach at YSC, so, and I kept that pic. I like that picture because I think that it's part of what are some of the aspects that no matter what age you're teaching, you want to keep these aspects in, you want to keep taking these aspects into account, right? Personal and social values, right? Respect, work ethic, all of these different values that you can read: resilience, adaptability, perseverance. Being good winners and gracious losers. I never say be a good loser because I don't want them to learn to be good losers. I want them to be gracious, to be able to take it, but I don't want them to get good at losing, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there. So I want to make sure that they can keep all of these things. Would you say that all of this is true? I mean, do sports give kids all of these, values and habits, and is that true? Yeah? Well, in today's age, it's only true if the adults around it make it happen. Because before, when you were, I was in a conference at the beginning of this month, and there was this coach from Argentina talking about, how parents talk about how when we were young, we used to, climb trees and do this and that, and how kids don't get to do that anymore today. And he kept saying, like, I don't remember climbing trees, I remember playing football. From Argentina, and he kept saying, like, all I did was play football. So I don't think I ever climbed trees. Now, I did play football in the street. And when you fall on asphalt, it hurts a lot. So you did learn to not fall as much, and you learn to be a little bit more careful. And so you learn to balance a little bit more, and you learn different things, right? But he was talking about how almost no matter where today, and especially in our society here in the U.S., we have an issue where kids are programmed with everything. We're taking them to all of these different places, and they have very little free play time. So everything that's done, it's done by, adults are organizing it. And I'll give you an example with the first time that we had recess at YSC Academy, that we had all of the kids up in the facility. And we said, you can't play football. That was like a rule because they were playing in the morning and then they were playing again in the afternoon. And we were like, okay, let's do some other things. And we bought some material for them, for them to be able to play badminton and for them to be able to play all of these different games. And we had them out there. The kids come up and they're like, okay. We're like, well, go ahead and play. And it's like, well, who's making the teams? Who's telling us where to stand? Who's telling us who's red and who's blue and who's, like, they don't know how to do it. And then I get to talk to college coaches who talk to me all the time. Like, I do this for college coaches, and I have college coaches who say to me, I have no captains. They don't know how to be leaders. When do we give them an opportunity to actually make decisions? Right? And so, unless we are actually providing an opportunity for them to make decisions and for them to be responsible and for them to be able to do certain things. Sports by themselves don't provide it. The adults provide it. And if, I mean, I know I'm super dating myself here, but if you remember Karate Kid, you know, the difference between Mr. Miyagi and the coach who says, get his knee, right? There's, you know, what are you teaching, huh? So what is it that you're teaching? So are you teaching honesty and respect and all of these things or not? So it really depends on the adults, what we're teaching for the kids, right? So we need to make it happen. I'm going to do a little bit of a combination of the role of the coaches and the role of the parents. So the coach's role, you know, the coach needs to make decisions for a group while making sure that he's helping individuals, right? So he needs to help individuals while helping a group, right? While making decisions for a team. He has to evaluate the performance of the team, and he's getting evaluated. Who is he getting evaluated by? Coaches at this level. By the parents, right? They're also getting evaluated by their directors, but they're also getting evaluated by the parents, right? The parents are giving feedback, they're talking to them, and so it can be a pretty difficult job if parents are critical, right? So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So, what's important for you coaches? What's important for your program? What are the things that matter to you? What are you about as a coach? What gives meaning to the program that you're running? Like, why are you here and why are you running it? What are the values that you want to give the kids that you're working with or that you want to share with them, right? So we need to be, when you're thinking about the soccer program, that when you are getting your kid to a soccer program, of course you're thinking, because I mean, I went through this as a parent in the US, so, okay, where's the closest one? Right? That plays a little bit of a factor. Like, is it close by or not? Who are the coaches coaching that? What's like the philosophy that they have? What is it that they're about? Right? How much playing time will he get? Or how much playing time will she get? Right? I mean, it's like all of these different questions that you have. So you need to know what the coaches stand for when you're talking to them. What is it that they want? What's the program about? Right? I know that working with the Union Academy and working very closely with the Academy, with the Continental Academy, some of the values that we want to teach is having kids be accountable and responsible, right? So if we have an 8-year-old, I remember when I was working with Ian Monroe up at YSC in one of the Union Junior sessions that we had an 8-year-old who came running and said to Ian, very angry, "My mom forgot my water." You know, and Ian just looked at him and said, "Your mom's not thirsty right now." Right? And he said, "You're responsible for having your bottle of water. So you make sure that next time when you leave if mom's picking you up from school, and make sure that with your bag, with your cleats and with your shin guards and all of that, you have a bottle of water, right? So that you're not thirsty during training." Send them off to the water fountain. We didn't let him just be, but it's a little bit of whose responsibility is it, right? It's your responsibility, so you're accountable for it. What are the things that you need to make sure that they're accountable for? I had another parent at one point in another soccer club who is nearby, so there's like a soccer corner or Angelo Soccer or one of these stores nearby. They get to the training session, the kid doesn't have his shoes, doesn't have his cleats. Dad's getting in the car to go buy another pair of cleats. And I go, and the kid tells me, like, "No, my dad's gonna go buy some for me." And I run out to the parking lot and I'm like, "Excuse me? Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yes." And I said, "Can you let him train in his tennis shoes today? Like, can you actually let him?" "Well, yeah, but I mean, I feel like it was a little bit my fault." And I was like, "That's all right. It's okay. He can train in his tennis shoes today." This kid has never forgotten his shoes again. One day, What's the lesson if you go out and buy the shoes? What do I do the next time I want new shoes? Oops, forgot my shoes. But you know, the messy shoes are out today, so maybe I could forget my shoes today and you could go out and buy me the last, you know, either messy or fill in the blank shoes, right? So make sure that you're holding them responsible and accountable to what is it that they need and what is it that you want, right, from them. So that's for both parents and coaches, right? So what is it that you want them to be responsible and accountable for? So that has to do with picking up the material, picking up the gear, right? So who's in charge of the cones, who's in charge of, and sometimes the coaches are doing all of that, but sometimes we actually need to get the kids involved and let them help out with that, right? We want to make sure that we do that. So again, talking about the coach's role, the coach, even if you're in a big club and the club has like an overarching vision or mission, each coach has for their team, you know, there's a vision that I have for this team, like how far we can get, what we want to do, how we want to develop, right? And so then they need to formulate a strategy and a plan. And coaches that I've worked with, including this group of guys, because I've worked with several of them, are really good at establishing a clear vision, are really good at formulating a strategy and a plan, but sometimes, not this group, but sometimes they're not great at communicating it. Sometimes they're not that good at communicating it, or they believe they've communicated it and they haven't as much. So that's something that you need to make sure that you are clear on communicating well with the parents and with the kids, right? Because the kids are, one of the college coaches that I work with was very surprised at the fact that how many parents are calling him to ask about playing time. And this is a coach that has been coaching for over 25 years. And he said, you know, 5 years ago when I started working with him, he said it's the first time that this had ever happened to him in his 20-year career. He had never had a parent calling and asking about playing time. And I asked, how are you handling it? And he's like, well, I get very upset, and I tell the players that, you know, that their parents shouldn't be calling me. And I suggested, why don't we handle it a little bit differently? Why don't you ask the parent what they need to know? Right? Like, so what is it that you want to know? Because I can talk to you about your kid, about how I think he's adapting to the school. I can talk to you about if he is hanging out with friends, or if he seems to be distracted, or if he seems to be... If you want to know about playing time, ask your kid. Because I'm communicating to your kid about playing time. So he can talk to you about that, or she can talk to you about that. So it's almost like, I understand that as a parent you have concerns, I'll talk to you about that. But the playing time, that's, you know, that's something that he or she needs to handle with me. They're in college, right? I had a parent, I teach at a master's program, I had a parent call me and say that his kid wasn't going to be able to come to class today. He had an exam. His kid couldn't come to class today. And I have a little bit of a sarcastic vein about me, so I just went ahead and asked, what hospital is he in? And he goes, excuse me? And I go, what hospital is he in? He's like, no, he's not at a hospital. And I was like, oh, did he lose his voice? And he's like, no, he has the flu. He has like a stomach bug. And I was like, and why isn't he on the phone? Like, right? So we go back to what do we need to, how do we need to communicate, and what are our expectations? So one of the things that I think that if you're going to have a meeting, if coaches are going to have a meeting with parents or with the kids, you know, if it's an 8-year-old and he's going to go through, you know, like, okay, he's going to get feedback from the coach, parents are invited to let the kid be the one in charge of that meeting, like with the coach, and you be there as support. You know, like, I'm here to support you. But coaches, you need to talk to the kid about what it is that he or she needs to get better at, right? I mean, it's like, or what they're doing really well, or how they can improve. But you're talking to the kid. Because half of the time we end up talking to the parent and the kid sitting over here, And you know, like little Johnny or little Mary, you know, really needs to improve her communication, and it's over here. So you need to talk to the person who needs to, right? Because we're talking about giving them accountability and responsibility. Coaches need to find the balance between challenging. So you want to set high expectations. You want to be giving the kids an opportunity to get better. So yes, they have to have high expectations. They have to have clear consequences, and they need to be able to see pressure as positive. So many times we're trying to protect the kids so that they don't feel pressure. How many of you can say, have any of you in your life had a setback? Yeah? Okay. Did you learn anything from that? Yeah? I would hope so, right? I mean, we all learn from setbacks, and we all learn from different, you know, from different challenges that we have. How will you know if your kid is resilient if he never has to face a setback? If we keep protecting the kids from everything, then how will we prepare them? Because one of the things that I see, especially working with the older, you know, kids in college and kids, and one of the things that I see is that we are bubble wrapping. You know, it's like, oh, nothing can happen to you. Like, I'm going to protect you from everything. But then I put a lot of pressure on. So then they have a boulder on top of them. And they have nowhere to go because they're bubble wrapped. Right? So they have no coping skills. So part of being resilient, part of the resiliency you get through sports, and part of comes from learning from setbacks, right? So we want to make sure that they can learn to see pressure as positive, that they can learn that this is something that they'll learn. Like, oh, I felt really uncomfortable, and then once I started playing, I actually kind of started feeling better and was able to get over it and was able to play well. Well, then, you know, you start seeing like there's an advantage to you having those butterflies. I remember talking to 6-year-olds, which is, you know, funny talking to 6-year-olds about pressure, right? It's like, really? But I was talking to, because, you know, a group of parents got together, asked me if I could talk to the kids. And I said, I'll talk to the kids for 5 minutes, but then I want to talk to all of you, right, to the parents. Because if 6-year-olds are under pressure, maybe we need to have a different conversation, right? So I asked the kids if they've ever felt butterflies, when they, you know, if you feel like that, like little, you know, in your stomach, like a little bit of, and a 6-year-old says to me, I like it when I feel butterflies, but I don't like it when they turn into bats. Which I thought was, I mean, I wanted to frame that. I was like, and obviously that distorts into vultures, and you know, it's like, because they're 6. So they started talking about all of these different things, and I was like, right. And I said, and what is it that makes it turn into bats? When does it turn into bats? What do you think the response was of the 6-year-olds? When what happens? When parents are yelling. That was the response, like when parents are yelling. That's when it turns into bats, because now it's not that much fun anymore, right? So that's where we need to make, and that's why I was like, great, so let's keep it with butterflies, and you know, you take a deep breath, and you put your arms up, and then you put them down, and you shake them all about, right? I mean, like 6-year-olds, like, what are we gonna do, right? And then I was like, okay, parents, in here. It's like, let's talk, right, about 6-year-old soccer, you know? It's like, let's keep it, you know, let's keep it real. So, again, you know, here, this is for coaches and parents, right? You need to make sure that you're setting the expectations, the clear consequences, and helping them see pressure as positive. And at the same time, you're doing individualized support. You're talking about what are ways that you can, I mean, if I'm challenging you, I'm actually giving you the support for you to be able to handle that challenge, right? I'm giving the attention to the whole person, what's going on with all of you, not just this part of you, right? And then the rewards are contingent upon behavior. And that where I'm talking about is, you're talking about the behavior, not the person. So if we had a kid that would come in late, quite a bit, and the coach started saying things like, you're lazy. And I said, if you say that, he can't change who he is, but he can change what he does. So let's make sure we're talking about the behavior, right? So when you're late or when you know, that you can change. So when you're late, it has a consequence for everybody else. So I want to make sure that you get here on time. If not, you're not going to start. It's a clear consequence to a behavior, right? So let's make sure that that's happening. Especially when it's happening because of the kid. We have one girl who was kept coming late to training and talked to the parents, and the dad got to the point where he just said, listen, I am ready, I am in the car, and I've gotten so many fights over it. Come on, let's go. She's highly committed to the sport, but still, you know, kind of almost enjoying the little bit of a power struggle that she has with dad. So dad ended up saying, I'm removing myself from the equation. I'm in the car waiting for her, and I have like my iPad with me. So I'm like looking at a book or whatever. When she comes out, we leave. Like, I'm not yelling, it's yours. So if we get there late, it's on you. I'm not speeding, I'm not rushing, it's on you. So now it's on you, and we know that. We know, like, the coaching staff knows that. So now, if she gets there late, she can't say dad or mom, you know, it's like, it's on you. Once that happened, guess who started getting there on time? You know, because now it's your responsibility. When we talk about creating an effective motivational climate for coaches, these are the things that you want to make sure that you're doing. You want to make sure that you enhance autonomy, that you are enhancing competence. I mean, think about it yourself. When you are, you know, when you're in your job in any type of position, what are the things that keep you wanting to come back and wanting to come for more, right? Well, there's different things, and part of it has to do, are you able to make any decisions? Can you make any decisions in your job? Are there things that you're doing that allow you to make decisions? So soccer players, you know, for our little soccer players, I mean, whether they're 8 or whether they're 18, if they get to make a little bit of a decision, and that's part of why I absolutely love soccer. It's because especially in the U.S., it's one of the only player-centric sports. The players actually get to make some decisions. Coach doesn't get to, you know, yes, you can yell and you can do whatever you want, but you don't get to do much until, you know, halftime. You don't get a timeout. You don't get to make the calls. Started working with women's basketball, and I was shocked at the level of control that the coaches can have. It was amazing to me. I was like, because I hadn't worked with it before, so 6 years ago when I started working with that, I was like, wow. You know, so it's like, okay, that's the screen, and you stand here, and you do that, and then you move over here, and that's, you know, the whole, and then it's like Dakota 44, you know, and I was like, I thought I knew basketball, and I was like, I don't know what Dakota 44, no, well, it's a specific play, right? That if you move like this and like that, and then you give it to number 44, it's Dakota 44, right? And I was like, okay. And then I actually see it in play, and I actually saw one of the players who is, you know, the point guard is, during the game, turning around to wait for a coach to tell her what she needs to do. I was like, wow. Not a lot of autonomy there, right? You're not making any decisions. And then you get mad because they don't show leadership, right? So you need to make sure that you're creating a climate where they have some autonomy, where some of the exercises that you have are, you know, some autonomy is embedded into that. Enhancing competence. What happens if it's too easy for them? They get bored really quickly, right? I was in a training session the other day, and there were 2 boys doing cartwheels. And one of the coaches was getting really upset over the fact that they were doing cartwheels. And I said, 2 things you need to take into account. Number 1, they're 6. Right? So that's number 1. Number 2, if you have some boys, they're waiting too long to get the ball. That's why they're doing cartwheels, because they don't have the ball in their feet. Because it's hard to do a cartwheel if you have a ball in your feet, right? So I was talking about, what is it that you need to do? So enhancing competence, making sure that you have a high expectation of like, this is what I want and this is what I believe you can do, without putting it too far out so that it's not, so that they don't get stressed. I mean, you want to have like that balance, right? How do you enhance relatedness? How do you think that you enhance relatedness? Because autonomy and competence, you can kind of balance there, but how do you relate, how would you do that?
In your position.
Huh?
Just explain how you are in their position in the situation.
Okay. And one of the ways to do that is to actually ask, hey, how are you? Right? I mean, you can't, like, I want to be related to you. Like, I actually want to belong to this team. If I want to belong to this team, how many times do we want to make sure that we want to have kids that know how to be team players, and we want to make sure that they're good teammates and that they're supportive of their teammates and that they're supportive of their club and their coach, and they wear the badge with pride, and the moment they get off the field, you go, wow, Mary can't share the ball, can she? And Mary's her friend, right? And you're saying that, and so, like, well, maybe that doesn't help the feeling related to this person, right? You want them to feel related to their club and to feel a part of it, right? They want to. And then as coaches, you want to enhance meaning, right? You want to make sure that they fall in love with the sport, right? That is, for me, that's like the number one job of if you get kids to love the sport, chances are they're going to keep at it. Will they become messy? No, because Messi already is there, right? Because that's one of the things like, oh, this is the next Messi. No, he might be the next Johnny, right? He might be Johnny, not the next something, because they're their own person, right? But you want to make sure that they are, if, I can tell you, I was, this last week that I told you that I was in a conference, I was with the director of the Academy of Barcelona. Would you say that that's like a successful academy program? Right? They've developed a couple players, right? So I'm talking to the director of the academy, and he was sharing a story about how when Messi got to Barcelona and he was 13, when he was 13 years old, there were some people who were on the fence about him. Do we really want to make that investment? Yes or no? You guys have all heard the story of Michael Jordan, high school coach who said, no, cut you from the team, right? Oops. Right? Well, Messi was an almost oops for Barcelona, right? Antoine Griezmann, who plays for Atletico de Madrid, used to play for Real Sociedad. He was kicked out, he wasn't accepted, and he had to go to Spain because 6 clubs in France said no. And he is playing for Atletico de Madrid, scoring quite a bit, and playing for France now, right? So many times where people say, no, you can't make it, or no, you can't. Well, how do you get kids to love the sport? Because all of those athletes that I just mentioned love the sport enough to stay in it, to fight, even when they were told no, or when they were, they stayed in it because they had a couple of people that believed in them, that gave meaning to what they were doing, right? This means something to me. So for me, every kid that I work with, whether they're swimmers, whether they're, whatever sport you choose or whatever, I work with a couple of musicians as well, which is really interesting, when it comes to performance psychology. And for me, it's like, if you love it enough, you'll be able to get through the bumps. If you love it enough, you have enough people supporting you. You have enough passion for it, right? And that's my number one worry when I have a 6-year-old telling me that it doesn't feel as good when it's bats. Because it's funny to hear, the difference between butterflies and bats. But when it's bats all the time, it's easier to quit, to just stop doing it, right? So let's make sure we keep it butterflies, and let's make sure that we help them get, for me, it's like I want to give them the injection of the bug of fill in the blank. I mean, for me, here, now, it's soccer. Like, I really want them to be passionate about it. I want them to love it. But I can't make it love. I can't make them love it. Because just like I told you that I have this, 21-year-old who is at Real Sociedad playing and, absolutely passionate about soccer, he has a 23-year-old brother who will not watch soccer even if his life depended on it. Does not like it. And took both of them. I mean, they started, we moved here, but we started in Mexico. So in Mexico, who doesn't like soccer? Who doesn't like football, right? I know one, right? And he went to like the little same football school, and it didn't matter if we did all of this, because ultimately the motivation that you have, you can create the environment. If they love it, if you create the right environment, they're going to love it and they're going to grow in it. If they don't, they'll find something else. Carlos later on found a passion for languages. He speaks 8. He speaks 8 languages and is about to graduate from Stanford University, so not too bad. Didn't like soccer, that's all right, but was able to get, what is his passion? Well, let's find what his passion is and let's help him with that one, right? Because you need to help your kids with that. Help them with their passion, not yours. So motivating players, how do you motivate players? You need to make the game meaningful to them. You need to give them choices. You want to make sure that they're connecting with each other and with the coaches. And you want to create opportunities where they're successful, right? You want to create those opportunities. Those are ways that you want to go about it. So coaches need to understand that parents are very helpful. Parents get a very bad rap, and parents usually get the bad rap of saying like, oh my God, parents are impossible. And I can't tell you how many coaches I have heard say, oh my God, if I had a team of orphans, it would be awesome. There's a whole other set of problems that come with that, right? And unfortunately, 1 or 2 bad parents or 1 or 2 misinformed parents can bring a whole team down. So you need to make sure that you're communicating well. So coaches need to openly communicate with parents. Plan your communication whenever possible. Be thoughtful with emails. And this goes for parents as well. When there's an email that you don't like, and there's a lot of people involved, I know that you probably don't do this, but I've been in situations where it's a reply all, and probably not a very good idea to do that, So make sure that you don't do that, or that you don't send out a list of who's going to play in the game before talking to the kids that are not rostered. These kids are not rostered for the trip, and you didn't talk to them, and a list went out that said these are the kids that are going. So you find out that you're not going because your name's not on the list. Not a great idea. So make sure that you are communicating with the kids about that, right? If you give respect, you can expect respect in return, right? And that goes both ways. And then set clear boundaries and guidelines about how parents and coaches need to communicate, right? It's usually not a good idea to try and communicate right after a game where you're upset because your kid didn't get enough playing time, or you thought that he was or she was treated unfairly. Probably not the best moment to talk to the coach. I had a coach that came to me after a game, and came to me and showed me the phone and went like, what do I do with this? 43 messages from a parent, 43 texts. While he was in the game, like obviously he didn't have the phone with him, but while he was in the game, he received 43 text messages from a mom on the stands watching the game. I can't believe you didn't start my kid. I can't believe da-da-da. Typical, I don't know why I'm writing. Towards the middle of the text, she kind of became aware that it was out of hand, so she's like, please ignore the text. Please erase the text. Please do not look at the following text. And then she got riled up again, and then she went back into, I can't believe you're doing this, you know? So it's like, and this is a rant that happened in the 2 hours of the game, right? So he showed it to me, and he said, what do I do with this? And I said, you hit the delete button. But then I thought, maybe you save it. Because this is a conversation that you need to have with the director and this parent to say, this is not acceptable. It's not okay for you to do this, right? This parent is actually a friend of mine. So I heard the story from the coach, but then she came up to me and said, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I completely lost it, and I was like texting the coach, and I did this and that and the other, and I was like, wow. So what have we learned? You know, like, sit on your hands while your kid is playing. Do not text the coach, right? I mean, probably not a very good idea. So how can you help, right? Can everybody see? Yeah, so the role of the parents. And so we saw in that survey, right, that parents have, you know, put in an enormous effort to get their kids to participate in sport. It's a definite time commitment. You know, you have to figure out your schedule to be able to drive them to and from, especially here, you know, in this area where we don't have like that transportation where they could just, I had some kids that moved there were kids that moved in from Amsterdam and from England, and these are kids that are very used to moving independently, right? You know, they're 15 and 16, but they were used to moving independently. They could just take the train and be at the training site because they just get off the train and the training site is right there. Not as easy here. You know, you don't have that type of transportation. So the parents are you know, getting carpools and trying to organize yourself or you taking them back and forth, right? And it's very funny to me when I hear people when Pablo started at Real Sociedad, I went to San Sebastian, which is an absolutely beautiful place, and the house where I was staying was 10 minutes away from the training site, right? And I was going to go pick him up after training. I was going to go a little bit early to watch the end of the session and then pick him up and bring him back to the house where we were staying. And this coach texts me and says, I'm up here at Subieta, you know, at the training grounds. I'll bring Pablo down so that you don't have to come all the way up here. It's 10 minutes away. It's like so that I don't have to. I was laughing out loud. So I was like, and then I had some of the Real Sociedad people who came to visit us at YSE, and we were going to go to a game that's pretty close. It's in Downingtown, right? I mean, that's pretty close. And then we had one in Lancaster, and it was like the distance for them. It was like, this is crazy, right? So, but that's what we have to do as parents. If we're here, you know, there's a definite time commitment. The way that parents react is a profound influence on the kids. I can't stress enough how much of an impact you have. You know, how much I have players who are already in, you know, in that step where they're between the academy and the first team, and they're already, you know, or some of the girls who've already gotten scholarships, you know, who've committed to this or that school. And the way that parents react sometimes in games where they're like disappointed because you didn't do as well, or really, really excited when you do well. You know, it's like having that balance, because when you react so strongly to a win, what's the message that you're sending there? Right? That's what's important, right? So we need to make sure that we're communicating effectively. And again, like I said, you need to show kids how to be resilient, right? So you need to make sure that you're doing that. When your child doesn't play a lot, there are times when the child, you know, they're not getting as much playing time as you would want, and that has to do with, okay, where are you? What club are you in? What's the philosophy? You know, we go back to the philosophy of the club. I had a parent, and I did this presentation, a similar presentation a while back, and there were hockey parents, right? And one of the moms in the back, you know, she's raising her hand, she gets up and she goes, and excuse me, but this is exactly what she said. She said, where do I find the half-ass hockey league? And I was like, excuse me? Like, I just want my kids to have fun. I don't need like the whole intensity and the, you know, how much play, you know, I want them to get to play. So even if they suck, I want them to be out in the ice and playing. Like, I just want them to play. So I don't care if they get to go to the Dallas Cup or the TA or this or that. Like, I don't care. Like, I just want them to be able to play. Right? So that, you know, like, I actually recognize the fact that, you know, at least she's, you know, this is my objective, right? So I need to find a club where, according to the level of the kid, he's going to get or she's going to get a lot of playing time, right? So depending on the club where you're at, you need to find out what's the philosophy of the club. How many kids are there? How many kids are do you have per team, right? And is it consistent? If they say you're going to get, you know, 40% of playing time, or everybody's going to get the same amount, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you follow through with that, right? I mean, as coaches, you follow through with that. So if they don't get a lot of playing time and you're happy with the coach and the club, make sure that they're enjoying practice and focus on how they're getting better at what they're doing, right? Even if they're not playing a lot. Are you getting better? Is this about performing, you know, are you performing better? Are you striking the ball better? Do you feel like your first touch is improving? How's your game awareness? You know, you're talking about, you know, specifics about them getting better at what they're doing, right? Encourage the focus on improvement, and encourage your child to talk to the coach. Coach, what do I need to do? Because sometimes coaches hide behind like, no, everybody's getting better. Yeah, everybody's good, and then somebody gets cut. Right? So we need to make sure that the kids know what's happening, right? Realistic about your expectations and keep the lines of communication open. So if you're constantly criticizing the coach, he or she may feel like you don't like this person, yet you're leaving them with this person for 2 hours, 3 times a day. So if you really don't like this person, why do I have to be with that person? Right? Here's the other problem. The kid may actually like the coach and like the teammates, and if you're constantly criticizing, they may shut down. And they may not tell you everything anymore. And how is practice? Great. Good. Yep. Good. Do any of you have teenagers? Yeah. I mean, it's like, so sometimes they won't talk as much, right? So make sure and make sure that they can talk about their feelings. One of the things that I've seen is the moment the kid gets in the car, parent starts giving information, starts talking, starts saying things, and then the kid shuts down. Like, you already know all of it, so why should I bother telling you anything, right? So you get the grunts of yes and no, right? So what happens when your child is a star? Ooh, scholarships, right? for sure. First team, piece of cake. Should be in Europe, right? Should be like for fill in the blank, right? University. They're gonna fight for them, right? But they're 8, right? So if you put in the amount of effort and money and time that you put in driving them and bringing them back and forth and paying for, you know, the extra class and the great cleats and the, you know, if you put that in the scholarship fund, and I'm not suggesting that they don't play soccer. I think that they should. I love it, and I think that they should, but they should be playing it for the right reasons, right? To get the most out of it and to be able to develop as complete human beings, right? There's a danger of your child feeling conditional love. You know, you love me because I'm good at this, right? And even when you're not doing it on purpose, I remember at one point when I stopped, you know, there's 4 children in my family, so I have 2 older siblings and I have a twin brother, right? And I was by far the clumsiest of the 4. I would trip on my shadow, right? And so when my dad was asked, you know, they do like all these interviews before the Olympic Games, you know, they interview the family and stuff, and they asked my dad, did you think that she was going to be an Olympian? Most parents are lying and they say, of course, I always knew, right? My dad was really honest. He was like, no. You know, he was like, no. I mean, she would trip on her shadow, so no, I didn't think so. But I mean, I'm super proud of her. I mean, it's great that she's doing it, you know. I wanted to be a gymnast. Do I look like a gymnast to you? So the high jump was the second best thing, right? So, but I remember in 1992, after I retired, after I stopped jumping, after I stopped competing after the Olympics, I remember my dad would always introduce me as his champ, right? So we would be walking around, you know, he's a retired cardiovascular surgeon, and he would be walking around the hospital, and I would be with him, and he would be like, this is my champ, you know. And I remember at one point, right after I stopped jumping, thinking, how is he going to introduce me now? Right? Because I was like, and so 3 months after the Olympics, I am with my dad at the hospital, and I had thought about it a couple of times, like, how's he going to introduce me now? And we're walking around, and he stops by somebody who I hadn't met before, and he says, this is my daughter, my champ. So I was like, oh, yeah, I am his daughter, number 1, right? And number 2, I'm always going to be a champ for my dad. It had nothing to do with me jumping. I mean, that was part of it. But for me, I mean, like, for my dad, it was like I was his champ, you know, and he was introducing me that way before I made it to the Olympics. You know, I mean, it's like, oh, yeah, my athlete, my champ, So, and to be honest, sports were always a very important part of my family. So we all participated in sports. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't like, do you want to participate in sports? What sport do you want to do this year, right? So it was always important. So it was a part of us. But I didn't feel, you know, like, I didn't feel like he was going to love me less, but I did feel a little bit of my identity, like, where is that, right? So we need to make sure that they don't feel that. Be aware with the stress of being the star. You know, you might want to say, yeah, you know, it's a team sport, right? I mean, they are in a team sport, and whenever I hear, especially with goalies or when they say we lost because of me, I was like, how did the ball get to you? Like, there's 10 other players in front of you. So if the ball got to you, and yeah, sometimes they make a mistake, and sometimes it goes right between the legs, and that one hurts, right? And you just need to say, yep, how do you learn from that? You know, how do you move on from that? Keeping things in perspective, right? Again, you know, when they're 8 and they seem to be great, they're not the next best, you know, it's not the next best thing. It's enjoying that moment and having them enjoy the moment more than anything, right? Do, both as parents and as coaches, set very clear expectations for behavior. What's the attendance? What's the work rate? What is it that you expect from them, right? Ask about training. How did it go? be specific, right? So ask open-ended questions, not just that, did you win today? Did you enjoy it? How do they answer to that? It's yes or no, right? It's like, what did you like about today? What did you improve upon? What were things that were different today, right? Provide praise, but be specific. Oh, we had a coach that we mic'd so that he could hear himself in a training session. In 30 minutes, he said good 47 times. Good, 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 great, good, 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 good. It's like, what? That was a horrible pass. What are you talking about, right? So be specific about, good, I like the way you're sitting. That's what I mean. When you open up your hips, it puts you in a better position, right? So you're making sure that you're giving that type of praise. Give responsibility, right? You're responsible for bringing in the cones or for doing, for doing different things, both for the coaches and the parents. You give them responsibilities. You conduct yourself with composure. You need to be the role model, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been with coaches that are going, stay calm! Patience! Patience! Right? And you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, the last thing that you're showing this kid is patience or tolerance or being calm, right? So you're talking about composure and you're losing it, right? So make sure that you take that into account, because they are looking at everything you do. Do not set outcome expectations. Winning, being a starter. Oh, yeah. If we had one where a parent said, if you get a hat trick, I'll buy you the PlayStation. Awesome motivation, right? Great. So all of a sudden, all the kids in that team, because they like this kid, all of the kids in the team are just feeding him the ball. And coach is going crazy. Like, what's going on here, right? And everybody, like, just feeding him the ball, to score 2 goals. He didn't get the hat trick. Didn't get the PlayStation. Sorry about that, right? It's like not the best message, right? Don't criticize the coach. If you're leaving your kids with the coaches, it means you trust them. So don't criticize the coach with your kid. If you need to have a conversation where you say, I'm not comfortable with this, you can actually express that, and you can say, we need to have a conversation with coach because I don't like this. But don't go, what is that coach thinking? Why did he start this player over that one? And what, it's like, it's confusing, right? I already said don't show conditional love. Do not get over involved. It seems like it's your activity because you spend so much time doing it, but it's actually theirs, right? So you need to let them own it. So bring a good book, enjoy the moment, but don't get over involved, right? Avoid attacking. And by avoid attacking, I mean don't attack their teammates, don't attack their coaches, don't attack them. When the kid gets in the car and you start talking about how this teammate of his or her is a ball hog and how they don't know how to play and what in the world were they thinking and what in the world were they doing, if your kid actually likes the teammate, because then we want them to be good teammates, right? But we've been kind of polluting that area by bad-mouthing their teammates or bad-mouthing the coach. So with the same for the coaches, don't say all parents are horrible, because the parents that are here are pretty cool. They're here, right? So we have to have that balance, right? So avoid attacking, because avoid attacking your kid, right? Sometimes we think we really know. We know what they should have done. So instead of going left, you should have gone right because they were open. So, right, let the coach deal with that one, right? The coaches coaches have a great impact, and they need to take responsibility for this. Because just like I'm saying all of these things about the parents, they need to make sure that the coaches need to make sure that they control the environment of the team, including the interactions that they have with parents and players. You need to make sure that you're cultivating a good culture, you know, that you are creating a good culture by the way that you're communicating with players and parents. The coaches are responsible for the expectations, you know, for the expectations and standards that they hold their players accountable to. So make sure that you are consistent with that. They control if they give the players confidence or if they take it away, and this is the same for parents. Because confidence, I can tell you, I was working with a synchronized swim coach who was working in Mexico. She was from Russia, and she's working with a Mexican Olympic team that was going to, with a Mexican team that was going to the Olympics. And for the longest time, she kept telling the athletes how bad they were. You know, every time they came out of the water, the swimmers decided in Mexico to teach the coach. When she first arrived, she's Russian, she's learning Spanish, and they decided to teach her a couple of swear words because it was funny with her accent, right? Guess what the coach was using when she's referring to what they're doing in the water? The words that she learned, right? Because that's what she learned. So she would say, it's crap, right? So every time they came out, she'd say, it's crap, in Spanish, you know, it was, this is what you're doing. So all of a sudden I have a group of swimmers who are crying with me. I'm working with them, they're crying because the coach is so abusive and she's telling them all these nasty things and they can't control it and they can't. And I said, okay, number one, who taught her the words? We did. Okay, lesson in accountability. Maybe you don't want to do that again, right? Number two, is she a good enough coach where you can use a filter so that you can actually listen to the things that you need to hear? You know, like the technically and choreography and all of this. She was an excellent coach, right? So she was not using the best words to transmit this to the swimmers, but ultimately use your filter. And because we're in the water, I gave an explanation of, you know, the filter that you have in the pool, how it lets in, you know, the water that's good, but it doesn't let in, you know, the crap, right? So let's leave that out. Okay. So come out, I'm with the coach, you know, she's using this word over and over again, and then she turns to me and she says, Christina, you need to give them confidence. And I was like, I forgot those pills, right? I mean, like, I don't have those. But working with the swimmers of, you know, how they were going to filter out this information and how they were a month into the program, a month before the Olympics, they're doing a lot better and they're training a lot better. But they have this system between them that when somebody starts getting upset because of what the coach is saying, they say something like, check the filter. And since they're in the pool, it's like, check the filter, right? So coach starts talking to me, she says, they're so much better. I just don't understand the damn obsession with the filter. You know, in the pool. She doesn't know that we have a filter for her, right? So it's like, okay. We go to the Olympics, they perform quite well. When we got back, the coach they offered her an extension, you know, another 4-year contract. And the swimmers, you know, they asked the swimmers if they wanted her. All the swimmers agreed that she was great and that she should stay. I said, I will keep working with you only if you clarify this with her. Like, we're not going to do another 4 years of the filter because it's not going to be efficient. You actually need to talk to her about how this communication is hurting you. It's not helping your confidence. You're actually taking it away. You're actually taking confidence away when you keep telling a kid that that left foot is really not very good. And I'm not saying you shouldn't say, you know, you need to correct and you need to give information. But if you want kids to be confident, you actually need to give them some information that helps them be confident, right? You can't tell them, yeah, we're going up against PDA today and they're pretty good. Yeah. They beat the Union 6-0 the other day. and now you're playing them. How did you do with a union? Ooh. You know, like, I mean, and with kids' games, I mean, one day they win and one day they lose, and it's like, I mean, and they keep inferring to what game, you know, if they played New York, or if they played the Union, or if they played, you know, whoever they played. And in any given day, they can beat each other, right? Because they're in that process. So what type of information do you want to give them that will give them confidence? Because you don't want to take confidence away, right? Help alleviate stress. You can help alleviate stress, or you become, or you are part of it. You know, if you put too much, well, you know, these 5 coaches, these 5 college coaches are coming to see you, so you better perform today. Did you talk to coach about it? Is he going to start you? Right? And so maybe that's where you say, what an opportunity you have today. Enjoy it, right? What a great opportunity to play today. What a great opportunity you have. And you need to play for yourself and for your teammates, right? That's the type of information that you want to keep giving them. And that's the type of information that you want to give each other. If anybody wants this presentation, that's my email. I mean, if it's available to you if you want it, and if you have any other questions, or if you have questions now, would be more than happy to entertain for a little bit. Thank you. Question, yes?
I have a question. You don't mind, in this country, the socioeconomic pressures, children having to go to college having to be financed. The cost in this country is not being addressed the way it should be addressed on our level. So it's being addressed with go to sports, get successful, that's your ticket. There's an incredible amount of pressures, you know, that parents are dealing with. How do I finance my child's, you know, trip to college? How do you recommend for these parents to deal with it, or you know, this whole socioeconomic pressure that exists? You know, it's not just the love for the game. I grew up in Germany. We didn't have pressures going to college. This is what you have to do to play. You play.
Right. And the statistics here with how many kids actually get scholarships for sports, I mean, it really depends, but not a lot. It can open some doors, and it can help you get into the right school, or it can help you. So you're right, absolutely right about the pressure that parents are under. The only thing that I worry about with that is I had a 16-year-old a while back that was talking about, he started saying, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to quit soccer. Mom and Dad came into the office to talk to me, to tell me, you need to convince him not to, because we've put way too much money into this project. You know, I mean, and he already has coaches asking about him, so he can't quit. And I was like, huh, what's the focus here, right? And every time that the kid said, I'm going to quit, Mom would just start crying, right? So how much power do you want this kid to have, right? So I just said, I'm not going to convince him of not quitting. I'm going to talk to him about what it is that's getting to him so much. And part of it was the pressure of that financial stress. You know, like if you quit, we can't pay for school, right? So it's like I don't know that I want to keep doing this, and I don't want to. So part of that conversation was talking to the kid about, do you want to take advantage of the opportunity that you have with this, and do you want to make the best of it, right? I do realize that parents are under, as parents are under an enormous amount of pressure. There's other ways of getting scholarships, and I can tell you because my oldest does not do any sports at all, and he has almost a full ride. Like looking at different, you know, like what are different ways that you can get into, you know, grants and financial aid, and different ways of, you know, of getting to where you need to get to for them to have that education. So I don't have an easy answer. I think that it is stressful, but I think that if we put the stress on, you have to get a scholarship. I can't tell you the amount of kids in the main line that I've treated with anxiety and that I have treated with injuries due to stress. And it's not that they're imagining or making them up. it's real injuries that you get, but that you get because you were so stressed that you end up getting hurt. Yeah. Kind of grim. Yeah.
As a parent of 2 boys, I love the game. I have December birthdays. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the relative age effect and how to help them through that physical gap. And, it's very evident in those very early years.
So I love that study because it's like in the beginning, in the early years, both in Europe and in the States, it has been proven that most of the academies and whatnot pick the January through March, April birthdays, in the early stages. As you get higher, it completely evens out, and in some cases, it's actually later birthdays. Why do you think that is? They had to be more resilient. They had to stick with it. So some of the players that actually had to stick with it, and there are studies going on now as to why some of the players that are in that, that October, November, December, birthdays, because when you get to the higher levels, whether it's college or professional, it evens out. So for me, it has to do with the players that kept at it, and you could have, one of my concerns with early developers is that they don't get challenged enough. And when you don't get challenged enough, whether it's because you were born in January or whether you grew, really quickly, if you don't get challenged enough, you get really comfortable. And when you get really comfortable, then when you actually have to work, you're not used to it. So then you end up saying, like, what's going on here, right? So you need to make sure that whatever developmental age your kid is, because you could have I know my Pablo, who's, you remember Pablo when he first got here? Sean remembers how he was this tall?
For a goalkeeper as well. Like,
he was a goalkeeper, and he was 15, and he was this tall. Seriously, he was so short. He's 6'4" now. So fortunately, he kept at it, even though people kept telling him that he wasn't, you can't be a goalkeeper when you're that big. It's like, and I just kept saying, look at your mom. You're gonna grow. And if you don't, there's nothing you can do about it. So focus on what you control. What can you control? These are the things that you can control. So then focus on that. So for late, if it's late birthdays, is it, and sometimes they have to play in a different team, that it's not like the highest academy, but they're still playing, and they have that love of the game. I was just in the conference that I was in, I keep referring to it, but it was a conference in Amsterdam, and it was by Aspire, by this academy in Qatar, and they had all of these academy directors and stuff, but they also had Xavi, Pujol, and Van der Sar as guest speakers, right? And super different stories. Xavi started when he was 13. Pujol was like super late, didn't get into the academy until he was 17. Van der Sar didn't get a contract until he was 23. So, different stages, different stories. If you love it enough and you keep at it, you might have a chance. It's like, if not, I have had stories of people who learned through the sport that then were able to apply those lessons learned and become, a brain surgeon or because of the things that I learned through sports. There's a great book from that, the coaches and parents. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Shane? What's the organization that's to educate coaches as well? Coaches and Parents Coalition or something like that.
Positive Coaches Alliance?
Positive Coaches Alliance. The Positive Coaching Alliance. A book that I really like from the Positive Coaching Alliance is a brain surgeon talking about how he wanted to be Pele when he was, 1970s, right? He was a kid in the 70s. And so he wanted to be Pele. And his parents never told him he wasn't going to be Pele, you know. He just kept, you know, they kept saying, you know, you keep playing, you keep, you know, you keep at it, you keep working, you keep, and he said, I was never good enough in soccer. But the things that I learned from soccer of hard work and the ethic and being a team player and being accountable and being responsible and all of that, he's now a very, very successful brain surgeon. So, and he said that most of it he learned through sports, right? So I don't, you know, it's having them, if they love it as much as you do, we're on the right track. Yes.
I would like to know about body language.
Yes.
Parents' body language. So, well, you know, say there's a parent that seems to exude negative body language,
Yes.
and no matter what they do, like, what's your advice for their body language? Like, what's the best body language for a parent that's like stressed out and maybe a little negative, even though they don't need to be? Like, what? If you had to like pick a pose, like what, what's the right pose that you would recommend?
So I think that the best thing to do is to actually talk about it. You know, to talk to your kid about, like, I know that I get like super stressed and I want you to know that that's mine and I own it and it's not about you. And I'm gonna try and sit and be calm and I'm not saying that it's necessarily you, I mean like whoever it is, but I'm gonna, huh?
It's a friend.
Okay, so it's a question of can you, like, number one is actually communicating, because I think that one of the biggest things that we miss is sometimes we actually need to talk to the kids about it. Like, oh my God, I lost it yesterday. I'm so sorry that I did that. And I'm actually gonna be aware of it and I'm gonna be cognizant about it so that I can actually change it. You know, but I don't want you to do that. You know, like I don't want you to. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm gonna, like, I can tell you that when Pablo was playing here, I would like not be next to other parents because the comments and stuff would drive me nuts. So I would just go and sit over here. Oh, he's in the other boat. I'm over here. And most of the parents sit kind of like in the middle. So I would kind of like remove myself from, so that it wouldn't, because it really did kind of drive me crazy a little bit. So I would just say, if she's aware of it, that's the first step. And it's like, okay, so maybe you want to kind of like bring one of those chairs and sit down and be like a little bit, so that, because I had a coach that I was working with that actually filmed him because he kept saying that he was cool and in control, and I just filmed him and then gave him the tape so he could see himself. And it was like kicking cones, throwing pennies, you know. It's like, yeah, you know. So just be aware of it, because you can't change something that you're not aware of. Yes.
I feel like sometimes maybe there's silos going on, like the coach needs to do this to improve the player, and then the parents need to do this to improve the player. And a lot of the parents, you know, as far as soccer like involves taking them to practice and, you know, things like that. Is there anything that you work together with other teams or academies or whatever where you talk to the players or the parents about how they can help the player with soccer outside of soccer practice? Like, yeah, I'm going to leave the coaching to the coach, but there's got to be something else at home that I can do besides, you know, say, hey, good job, good delegation.
Right, and part of it,
with, like, the coach, you know, so.
and part of it would have to do with asking, getting the kids involved, right? Like asking the kids, what is it that you think that you can do? Or if you think that you are, you know, if you think that you are losing it. I had a kid who, his emotional composure was very, very low. So lacking emotional composure, right? So it's actually giving strategies and thinking about how could you handle this better? You know, what are things that you could do to handle this better? How can you communicate more effectively with a coach? It's actually giving them tools. Is that more or less where you're going, or no?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just sometimes, well, you know, they have the progress reports or we, you know, we get feedback.
Right.
But that's like what they need to improve on some of that stuff. So is there I
So-
guess maybe it goes back to communication, is that something?
It
that
goes
the
back to
coaches
commu-
are taking on?
It goes back to
Or is there
communication
something
and
that
the,
we can help take on, even though we don't know how to kick ball?
yeah, I think that, I mean, I think that even if you don't know how to kick a ball, I mean, like, you can, I mean, you can definitely say, so if you need to improve your first touch and the coach said that you needed to do this and you really want to do it, then there's a wall right there and I can come out and see you. Or I can film you so that you can see it. Or I can, you know, like even if you don't know, it's like if he kicks the ball or if she kicks the ball 40 times this way or that way, then that helps, right? And so it's providing the support to what is it that they said that you needed to do? How can you do that? Do you need to get to practice a little bit earlier? Can you talk to coach and ask if you can work on this with him or her at this time or that other time? You know, I mean, things like that to give them some tools, for sure. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Continental FC, thank you all for coming out tonight, and another round of applause for Christina. Have a good night and a safe drive home.
Thank you.
Still waiting.